Hi guys, it's Rob from Royal Balls. I've got an update on the Terranium. This guy has been in there now for a couple of weeks and I've got some interesting observations. A little bit of background on the next few videos that are coming up. I've been asked by quite a few people to talk about handling, stress and how we interact with our snakes in our collections. Not directly related to breeding, but it is an important part of the hobby. Everybody has to interact with their snakes, and actually it fits into this terranium experiment quite well, because what I'm going to show you today is some behaviours that I've noticed from this guy in the terranium that really help us to understand what our snakes are doing in their tubs. Of course, we can't see in the tubs, so this guy is giving me some perfect lessons on how snakes behave. There was some concern when I released the last video about the underground tunnel system and the possibility of my snakes getting stuck, and I do appreciate those comments. It is a valid concern. So the first part of the video is going into a little bit more detail about that tunnel complex and how it's designed. So let me alleviate those fears first of all. Okay, there was a little bit of concern after my last terranium video that that underground tube system, my snake was going to get stuck. So let me just reassure you that these tubes are actually made for hamster cages, and they are completely transparent and they do come apart. They're actually 6 centimeters in diameter, which is bigger than a toilet roll. Now, the other thing about these tubes is that whilst they are transparent and you can take them apart in sections and I can get to them, the other feature of this system is that when you take these end caps off, the tubes come apart in 2 halves. So even if the snake did get stuck, it's pretty easy to rescue it and the snake would not be hurt. But let me just reassure you again that these tubes are actually, there we go, that clamps together and we can fit that back onto there just like that. So they come apart very, very easily. Now, this is an adult hide. Actually, it's not big enough for a fully grown adult, but it is actually a decent sized hide with one entrance to it, and you'll see that the tube actually is about the same size as the entrance to the hide. So this diameter tube, it doesn't really concern me too much that the snake is going to get stuck. If it does get stuck, I can easily rescue it. So I hope that reassures you that everything is under control and that the snake is not actually in any danger. What we can do with the terranium in future as the snake grows, or if we wish to modify it, is to actually simply remove the tube system and just have the holes in the false floor, and so the snake can get down into a lower compartment. So I would take out all the stuff from the lower part, all the spacers and the underground tubes, and just leave it basically as an underground tub that the snake could get through those holes in the floor. So again, something else that I might experiment with in the future. I don't think the snake is in any danger of getting stuck at the moment, and I'll just show you some photographs of a snake using a toilet roll, and actually a snake far larger than you would expect being able to do a U-turn inside the toilet roll, and you'll see its head stuck out at the same end as its tail is stuck out at, and its body's stuck out the other end. And that's a toilet roll which is much smaller diameter than these tubes. And that's a snake which is much larger than the snake that is currently in the terranium. So again, let me reassure you, I did think of that. It is under control and I don't think that the snake is in any danger. But should it become an issue, it's very easy to dismantle these without hurting the snake. I can see in because the tubes are transparent. So please don't worry about the snake. I do have its best interests at heart. Okay, now that we understand the tunnel system, let me tell you right up front that this guy hasn't used it. He hasn't climbed, He hasn't exercised, he hasn't gone underground. He moved into his hide at the front of the terrarium here. The hide is actually facing backwards, and that's where he's stayed since he's been in there. He hasn't moved more than 3 inches, and that's just to stick his head out of the hide. So the next part of the video is going to focus on some of the behaviour that this snake has been illustrating. It isn't that he's just lazy and doesn't move at all. In fact, he shows very strong diurnal cycles and behaviour patterns, and I'm going to show you some of those today. I only notice these because it's in a terrarium and I can see what he's doing. But when you see this behaviour, it's very easy to relate that to what your snakes are doing in tubs. So here we are during the day, and the snake is fast asleep in this hide here, and this is a perfect time now to go into his terrarium and do any maintenance we need to do without disturbing him. So I'm going to take the opportunity to top up his water bowl. So there we go, and I can, if I need to, readjust anything that needs to be adjusting, but you'll see that nothing is actually disturbed. This snake lives in this hide. This is the only bit of the terrarium that he actually ever uses. He went in there on day 1 and he's still in there now, has not moved at all. But it is daylight, you can see that his head is there, so he does know we're messing around with his cage. But we're not disturbing him in any way. He's not flinching back, he's not giving us a fearful response. He has been fast asleep. We've topped up his water bowl without disturbing him or stressing him out. We can close this up again now, and I'll shoot a video later on tonight and contrast that with his behaviour when it's night time. We can expect a different response from the same snake at night. Okay, night time now, and he's out. He's set up his ambush position. He is alert, and he's very sensitive to movement now. So now would not be a good time to try to do anything in his terrarium. He is sensitive to movement, but there's no scent of prey in the room, and I suspect that if I disturb him, he will retreat back into his hide. Any movement now where there's no scent of prey is a possible threat. So let's just see what he does if I approach and try and open the cage. You can see he's very aware, he's scenting. But he's not actually retreating. I think a sudden move would probably make him retreat. He's curious. He's actually coming towards the camera. Those of you that target train, this snake has not been target trained, but he's confident enough to come out. Okay, there's no prey. Now he realises there's no prey and he's retreating back into his hide as an aversion response to a possible threat. There he goes. So he doesn't like the movement because it's not prey. That's typical behaviour at night time. You can see he's very alert and aware, but he's very sensitive to movement, and we could stress him by attempting to do stuff in his terrarium at this time of night. So what I'm going to do now is to feed him, and I'm actually going to bring some prey into the room, and you will see the different response again with the scent of prey. So I'll leave him for 5 minutes and he will come out and set up his ambush again. When I've gone, the threat has gone, he'll set up ambush again, and with the scent of prey in the room you will see that he comes forward when I open the cage rather than retreat back into his hide. So a different response again when there's the scent of prey in the room. So let's do that. I'll bring some rats into the room so that he can smell them. You will see that he is orienting to the front of the cage, even though his hide is pointing backwards. He knows what direction the food is coming from, and he's set up his ambush accordingly. Very smart little snake. Okay, 10 minutes later, with the scent of rat in the room, he's back out, and now I'm going to feed him, and you'll see a different response this time. This time he will not retreat. This time he'll come forward and accept the food. So here we go. You can see this time he is much more ready to strike. So here's the food. And there we go. Completely different response to the first time when there was no food, where he retreated back into his hide. This time he accepts the food. So we've seen this snake during the day, we've seen this snake at night when there's no food, and we've seen this snake at night when there is food, and we've seen him behave in 3 entirely different ways. We're going to use that knowledge in our subsequent video when we look at how best to interact with our snakes in the snake room for cleaning, for feeding, and for doing everything that we need to do with snakes. They are actually quite predictable. So let's let this guy eat his meal in peace, and you'll see that when he's eaten it, he does not retreat into the hide and go to sleep. He will set up the ambush again. They're opportunistic feeders. He's been successful once tonight. He'll wait and see if he can be successful again, and he will not retire back into his hide until the morning. Okay, so there we go. He's swallowed the prey and he's reset the ambush. Doesn't matter that he's already eaten, he's ready to eat again. creature of habit. The next series of videos that I'm going to show you are, first of all, I have a short video showing snakes having supervised roam time, and this is just me cleaning. I clean on a morning, and very occasionally one of the snakes will show an interest in actually coming out of its tub, and I allow it to roam free. I do not handle the snake, but I allow it to roam free. And the point of this is to show you that you, number one, can enjoy your snake without actually physically touching it, and in actual fact this is probably the way that the snake best enjoys its roam time as well, when you don't actually touch it. But also to show you what a snake looks like when it's behaving in a relaxed manner, when it doesn't feel threatened, when it's not coiled back, when it's not defensive, when it's just roaming free on the table. That's not to say that these snakes that you will see in the next video are not stressed to some degree. It's not natural for a ball python to be out in the open in daylight, so there is a degree of stress, but I think it's, as you will see, it's about as minimal as you could get in a captive environment. These snakes are doing this at their own consent. I am not forcing them to do it. I'm not pulling them out of their tubs in order to exercise. They are doing this by themselves, and the purpose of that is to show you what a relaxed snake looks like, so that we can relate that to how we interact with our snakes and interpret their body language when we have to interact with them, to clean them, to pair them up, to feed them, and what the snake is actually doing when it's in its tub and you first open that tub and you get a surprise reaction from the snake. I think you'll see that some of the behaviors that this guy here has illustrated will help you to understand perfectly what your snakes in tubs are doing. That will be the third video, so I'll release this one tonight. The video of snakes just crawling around, I'll release that later in the week, and you can take a look at that if you're interested, but I will warn you that unless you put it into the context of knowing what a relaxed snake looks like, it's just a video of snakes crawling around on a table, so don't get too excited over that one. The following video we'll look at what I'm calling minimal stress handling or minimal stress interaction with the snakes in your collection, in order that you can interact with them, clean them, pair them up, do whatever you need to do, and in some cases where the snakes are pets, actually interact with them and handle them with minimal stress to the snake. It's a great relationship once you understand how the relationship works. Now, with regard to this guy in the terranium, his behaviour has become extremely predictable, as you've seen from the video clips that you've seen today. So my thoughts on continuing this experiment are either to, number one, remove the hide from the front of the terranium here, force the snake to actually move, and I'm a bit reluctant to do that because he is so settled, he's thriving, he's eating well, he's actually doing everything a snake should do. But should I change it in order to force some new behaviours that we maybe haven't seen before? I suspect I know what will happen if I remove the hide. He will start to wander in a very restless way, and that's when you'll start to see climbing as he looks for an escape route. That's when we'll see him maybe looking for an alternative hide and going underground. So as I say, I'm a little bit reluctant to do that, but I am curious, and that's one thought that I had. Remove his hide and see what happens. Or the other thought that I had was to actually switch out this snake. Take this snake out of his terrarium and put him into a tub that he would normally be in if he was any other snake, and replace him with a snake of the same age that has been in a tub, and I stick him in the terrarium and see what he does. So we get a feel then for how flexible these snakes are in terms of changing out their conditions. So swap a tub snake for the terranium snake, let's swap them over and see how they both react to that change in environment. Again, that will be an interesting illustration of ball python behaviour in these various setups. I've mentioned before, I don't actually think the snake cares very much. The terranium is for us, and the snake behaves in the same way in a tub as it does in the terranium. Let's see if we can prove that. Okay guys, and just a last little clip here just to remind ourselves of why we are here and why we actually interact with our snakes, and that's to breed them. I've had my first ovulation of the season. You remember in the early part of the season I did actually cool the room for 2 or 3 months, and then I switched the air conditioning off and the temperature rose by about a degree and a half. So we went from 28 degrees to about 29.5 degrees, and my first snake ovulated 1 month after doing that, and I'm still waiting for other ovulations, but I'll just show a clip of that snake that has ovulated, again just as a reminder of why we're here. We're actually breeding these snakes. So there we go guys, that's the first ovulation. There's no mistaking that. Huge swelling in the lower third of the body, and the tail hooked around and well sucked in. I'm not going to disturb this girl too much because I've already had a look prior to shooting this video, so we'll close that back up. But that's ovulation number 1 for the season. Awesome. So, thanks for watching. Don't forget to share, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.